Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video as there is a bonus pair there for you. We will go through my trades for the week first, progress through that, and then we'll take a look at the DXY and the remaining pairs. So if there is a particular pair you want to skip to, feel free to use the timestamps down below. But I still have two positions which I'm carrying over from last week: dollar CAD shorts and Aussie CHF shorts. I also took a new position on New Zealand CAD. I did end up exiting this one a little bit early as my confluences weren't holding. However, I may look for re-entries if I can actually spell Aussie CAD. There we go, New Zealand CAD. So yeah, I did hop into a trade with this one, went short on this 4-hour candle closure here, expecting this high to hold and continuation from that. Price did close above, and more importantly, the daily candle did pull back very aggressively and closed above that level as well. So you can see the daily candle here pull back, close above, indicating to us that, okay, we tried to see momentum to the downside, but it failed. So when I had that signal there on the daily chart, as well as the 4-hour showing strong momentum as well, that bullish engulfing candle, I did decide to pull the plug a little bit early in the trade. However, I may be looking to re-enter again next week. Depends what we can do at the highs there. Potentially for a better entry, if I can get some entries around there and possibly some stops above the high like so. Could look to maximize the risk reward and capitalize on a similar move. Again, the idea with New Zealand CAD is I'm still looking for the big break of structure we've got here, and I'm looking for a lower high and another push to the downside for another lower low. And we are very corrective in the way up, so I'm still expecting to eventually see a lower high form and a swing to the downside. So that's still my expectation with New Zealand CAD. Of course, CAD's been very, very weak for a while, and it looked like potentially we could be gaining some strength for CAD. Looks like Euro CAD, Pound CAD, all potentially hitting some tops as well. Could be looking to retrace as well, which could help fund this move to the downside. So I'm expecting a bit of a sell-off for New Zealand CAD. However, I may have just mistimed the entry a little bit with that trade there, but perhaps there might be some nicer entries at the top here. We'll go into a bit more detail when we actually get to this pair later on. As for USD CAD and Aussie CHF, I'm still holding those positions. USD CAD was, when was it? 4th of March, so not last week, but the week before that, I entered this dollar CAD position. Again, the idea is that we've had this big impulse to the downside. I'm looking for the correction of that for the next swing to the downside, and basically expecting this to be the top of the high for a swing. As long as price remains below 1.45, respecting that resistance, I remain in the trade. Still, so far, rejecting that level pretty well and expecting a push to the low. Nothing crazy with this position, just looking for a push back into the swing low. Perhaps we might go a little bit further. We've also coming from a really big level on the weekly chart, which I know could potentially give us a big reaction as well. So expecting a little more downside there for dollar CAD. And Aussie CHF, which I've entered over a month ago now. Again, still I've taken most of my profits, so I'm just leaving a small amount to run. We're going to see how this one continues. I'm trading stops. The current stop loss is trailed where this where that line is, so just above that swing high. The expectation is a swing back into the low here. We've broken through some key support, so as long as we can stay below that, I do think there's a good possibility Aussie CHF can get that rollover. Of course, worst case scenario, price breaks above, takes out my trading stop loss, and my remaining positions get closed still for a win there. Of course, not as big as I'd want them to, but of course, that's the reality of trading. Not always going to get your full TPs, but like I said, I already took most of my profit at the low here. Going to see if we can get the rest to get to the lows at 0.536. So that's currently what I'm trading at the moment. In terms of the dollar, still very bearish on this one. We've had a really big drop over the past week or so, and now I'm just expecting retracement and more continuation. If I expand to the weekly chart, all I'm looking at is a fake of this high here. Really, really strong impulse. So I'm looking at this as a big inverse V-shaped pattern, which tends to mean more downside, and we've got a massive level of support here around 101, 100, which I'm expecting price to come back and retest. So my expectation for dollar is a lot more downside. However, first I do want to see some retracement, and it looks like we're getting that. You can see the market is a bit more tied now, a bit more corrective, so perhaps there might actually be some buys there on the dollar next week, basically looking to capitalize on the pullback there of USD. I'm not so interested with that move because I expect the bigger move to be the sell, so I'll rather just focus on that hopefully price can come to me, find my entries, and then take advantage of that swing. But there might be some nice buys on the dollar, or sells on euro, or sells on pound next week, which we'll take a look at in a second. But I'm still very much looking to short, and the areas I'm looking to short from is this level here firstly. So we'll see what price does around 104.5. If that doesn't hold, then I'll look at 105.6. So those are my two levels I'm looking to short from. We'll see if we can get there next week and things look good. Shorts on the dollar, and yeah, really looking to take that back to the lows. So going over to Euro USD, so basically looking for the inverse of what I just described there on the DXY. So again, if we look at the lower time frames, we're getting very corrective now. So potentially there might be some nice shorts there for Euro to take it back to the downside. I'll wait for another push to the upside before considering a short, so you can get a nice stop loss above the highs and take some downside off that off that kind of area. Better entry, better stop loss, rather than trying to get involved here, which is not really at the best place possible. But yeah, push to the upside, respect the highs. There could be some nice shorts. Like I said, I'm more focused with the longs. So if I go to the daily chart, again, my expectation is we've got a big V-shaped pattern here, and now I'm looking for the correction and the continuation. And the areas I'm looking at is either the retest of the low here at 1.077 or the retest of this high here at 1.06. I'm just waiting for price to come to either one of those areas, see how price gets there, see how we react, and then if things look good, find some entries and hopefully swing it back into major resistance on the daily chart, which is around 1.105. You can see price has tested this multiple times and has really failed to break through. So that's what I'm expecting price to be drawn towards, and probably a lot higher. I expect probably price to take up the high here actually longer term, but for now we'll just we'll keep an eye on 1.10578. So yeah, very, very bullish on Euro, just waiting for some pullbacks. Hopefully we can get them next week and take some buys, but that's the plan there for Euro USD. Okay, so next up we've got USD JPY. So I'm looking for a bit of a retracement here. I am expecting a bigger move to the downside still. I'm still looking for a push back to 140. That's my longer term expectation. However, it's been a bit of a slow grind to the downside. It looks like price is becoming a bit more tired. Hence, I'm expecting a bit of a pullback now for dollar yen. There is a big level here on the daily chart around 151, 152, which is kind of where I'm expecting price to retrace back into for potentially a sell. It depends how we get there and how we react as well. I have marked on a fib from the high to the low. We got the 50% there. So there is a possibility we might spike above to go and grab the 50 before we do potentially have that sell. But in the meantime, depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for buys, I do think dollar yen's actually at a nice area for some longs, especially after taking out the lows here on the left. We are likely due a bit of a correction. Although I would wait for price to push back into the lows first before looking to long. Looking for some entries up here, just put your stop loss in a very kind of unsafe place. If you can get your stop loss below the low there, it puts in a safer place. And of course, if you can get your entry lower down, you maximize your risk reward as well. So two birds with one stone there. But yeah, looking for a bit of a pullback there for dollar yen perhaps. If you're looking for some longs, that does look like a nice trade. Like I said, the bigger move for me still looks to be to the downside, so I'm more focused on the shorts. So I want to see price have a bit of relief, see what we can do around 151, 152. If things look good there, depending how we react, possibly might even spike into the 50, looking for a big swing back to where we came from, and possibly a lot lower as well. But for now, just going to be looking at the buys for some sells later on. Of course, this is probably going to take more than a week to play out, but for now, this is kind of what I'm looking at. We may not have that pullback. We may kind of just keep pushing to the upside early next week. So perhaps we start focusing on the sells there. But for now, keep an eye on some longs at 146 if you're looking for some longs. If you're looking for some shorts, keep an eye around 151, 152. Big daily level there. Fib level just above us as well. And if things look good, there could be some nice sells to bring it right back down. And that will be the plan next week for dollar yen. Okay, so over to dollar CAD. So very bearish on this one, looking for a lot more downside. Again, I'm really short on this one and expecting a push into the low, and that's still very much the plan. As long as 1.45 can hold, because essentially what I'm looking at is this big move here to the downside. This is a pullback of that move, and now I'm expecting another swing. So my expectation is a swing back into the prior low. We could go a lot further, but I'm just going to call it that level of support as a healthy target. You can always leave smaller positions to run, but I think just because we are still a bit counter trend there for dollar CAD, don't want to push it too far. We are coming from a big level on the weekly chart, so in fairness, there is a possibility for a really big sell-off if we do reject that level. You can see 2 prior attempts we had breaking through this high. We've had some really big sell-offs, so the possibility for another one is there. But of course, there'll be multiple opportunities on the way down, so we don't necessarily need to just short high and hold forever. But a target to that low, especially if you're looking for kind of like a medium swing trade, it makes the most sense. So as long as we can hold 1.45, I would wait for another stab into that level. You can see every time price gets there, we've had some really healthy rejections. So if you can get there again, there's a good chance we'll probably see another rejection, find some entries, stop loss above the high, and then shorts back into the low make the most sense there. So that's the plan for next week. Just keep an eye on 1.45. As long as that can hold, expecting a nice swing back into the swing lows on the H4 for next week. Okay, so over to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound, I am looking for some more upside for some big sells potentially. Depends how we react when we get there. But if I zoom out to the daily chart, you can see overall the market has been trending down. There is a big level of support. There's a big level, big trend line running through the market. So as we approach 0.85 area, if we can see some suitable rejection, there could be potentially a big swing back down. If you're on a more intraday basis, there could be some nice buys towards that area. We had a really big impulse to the upside recently. Now it looks like some prior resistance on the daily chart. As you can see there, it has been flipped at support. So I do like the longs from here for Euro Pound, trying to take the trade back into that resistance at 0.85 or 0.848. But first, of course, in terms of entries, you do kind of want to see price correctively push back down first, and then find some entries at lower down, because that way you can get a better entry, better stop loss, and of course maximize your risk to reward there as well. And then once we get to those areas, you can start looking for some sells, whether it's going to be at the high here, or like I said, at 0.85, which is that level just above us. That could also be a really nice place for a short. Depends how price gets, depends how we react. Again, a big part about trading is being reactive. And seeing, okay, price is respecting this level, okay, shorts look good, or price is not respecting that level, maybe it's going to push a little bit higher or a little bit lower, and then you look for your entries. So those are my 2 areas of interest there for some shorts for Euro Pound. But for now, looking for a bit more upside. Let's see if we can get some nice corrective behavior on the way down. Some longs from 0.837 look good, and then we can see what we can do around 0.848 and around 0.85 as well for some sells. And that's the plan next week for Euro Pound. Okay, so over to Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar, I'm expecting a big move to the upside. I'm very bearish on USD on the DXY. So all these USD majors, I'm expecting upside. Of course, not for dollar CAD or dollar CHF or dollar yen. But Aussie dollar, I'm expecting a big turn around. And looking at the price action, that is justified as well. You can see where we're trading back at major support. If we look to the left, looks like price is running a bit of steam. We've had a lot of rejection. We spent quite a few weeks here as well, so it looks like buyers are kind of holding up pretty well. We had a really aggressive bearish candle a couple of weeks back, hasn't really amounted to much either, so I do think we'll see a bit of relief here for Aussie dollar. So I do think the buys is where the bigger move is to be had. In terms of entries, that's the tricky thing with Aussie dollar, because we're kind of in the middle of nowhere right now. In terms of entries, I would like to see either another push back into the lows here for some longs. This is where I mentioned a couple of weeks back where we just missed it. I think that's still a nice trade opportunity if price was to get there. Or let's go create some nice bullish structure, break through the high on the left, and perhaps look for the retest of the high, or perhaps a retest of this high. Again, depends how big of a breakout it is and how we pull back. But something like that will look good, because at that point, at least we've got some bullish structure to work with. Higher high, higher low, higher high again, and then we're looking for the next higher low, and so on and so forth. So something like that would interest me, because at least now I know that, okay, we probably turned around, bullish structures forming, like we've seen with pound USD really, which we haven't got to yet, we'll get to in a moment. But at least at that point, we've kind of turned around, and now we've got some bullish structure to follow. At the moment, it's still kind of consolidation really with Aussie dollar, hence why it's good to buy low, get a safe stop loss, and maximize your risk to reward. So in terms of opportunities for Aussie dollar, something like this could look good. It's still a bit of a way away before that does form. We need the breakout first and then some pullback, so that might even take a week in itself. Or if we do have a very bearish week for some reason, maybe USD wants to retrace and it's a bit aggressive, might see some buys down here to look at as well. But that's really what I'm looking at for Aussie dollar. Buys for this one, potentially above on a retest of 0.64, or if we pull back to 0.614. So that's the plan next week. Okay, so over to New Zealand CAD, so very bearish on this one, still looking for a push back into support at 0.79. We're having a very corrective move to the upside, so I'm expecting this to be short term for a continuation back down. We've broken through some structure, we've broken out the channel. Now the expectation is a low high for a new swing to the downside back into support, and then we'll judge what happens from then on. But for now, still looking at shorts. You can see if we look to the left, price is taking out some highs here, and we're really struggling to sustain that. We're still seeing a lot of wicks to the upside. We had a big wick to the downside on Thursday, which is why I exited my trade early. Then we had another push to the upside, but price is still failing to break through this area of resistance and still struggling. So if we can keep that up early next week, I do think there could be some nice sells on the lower time frames to take advantage of a reaction. Whether we get the full swing to the downside, that's a different question. There are of course safer targets to have, so I'm looking at potentially some sells right at the high here next week. Even if you look for a short-term move back into support around here, I think that makes a load of sense. You got resistance, support. You don't have to necessarily look for the full swing. I probably won't even look for the full swing myself. I'll probably take most of my profit around the lows here, and then leave some to run as well, because NZD CAD's a very choppy pair right now. So the chances of seeing a nice clean move and then price finding support against you is actually pretty high, even if you have an expectation of where the market's going to go. You have to remember that you're trading the market, not necessarily the analysis all the time. So I'll probably take most of my profit around 0.812, 0.81, and then leave positions to run. And this could be a nice area to take profit as well. But yeah, New Zealand CAD still looking very bearish. As long as we can hold 0.826 or 27, we'll call it, I'll stay short bias. If we have a strong break to the upside like so, then I'll back away. Maybe we are turning to the upside at that point. But as long as we can hold resistance here, continue the wicks with the daily chart, there's a nice swing to be had, potentially back to the lows here as well. But there are a few areas you can look to take some profit at. There's a trend line here. That could be a nice level to book some profits as well. But that's the plan I have next week for New Zealand CAD. Okay, so over to pound NZD. So this one again is still very bullish. However, it does look like it's time for this one to retrace and see some downside. If I scoot to the higher time frames, this is the weekly chart, you can see that after the market tends to create a new high, we do tend to see a bit of a pullback, and that looks like what price could be going through at the moment. And overall, we are still very corrected to the upside. So eventually, I do expect to see a pretty big sell-off for pound NZD and similar pairs to this one in the near future. But for now, at least expecting some retracement. For all we know, we could still see easily another continuation to the upside. So I'm not going to call for that big move just yet until we start to get some big break of structure. But for now, dropping to the lower time frames, the daily chart, you can see some strong bearish engulfing candles, a lot of wicks to the upside. The market is looking a little bit tired. So if you're looking for some more aggressive trades, I do think some nice shorts look good for next week. Potentially a retest of this area here. Looks like price has created some resistance, kind of faked the high a little bit over here, and has now kind of used that to potentially kickstart the retracement. So perhaps some pullbacks on the lower time frames on the retest there will look good. Of course, we have to see how price pulls back, but I think that will look like a nice trade. And then you've got some nice buys if you're still looking to follow trend. Down at 2.22, we've got a solid level of resistance. Price broke out, never had the retest of that. Got some nice trend line confluence there, and as I mentioned, price is still very, very consistent with all of these higher lows. So the probability of us putting another one in is still pretty high. Unless we get some red flags from somewhere, there is probably at least another bounce. It might not get back to the high, even if it's just a push back into this high. That's still a worthwhile trade to look into there. So yeah, pound NZD pretty bullish on this one overall. Expecting some retracement at least to start the week off, as long as we can stay respecting that 2.27 area. There might be some nice lower time frame shorts to look at on a retest and get some continuations from that level. So yeah, that's the plan next week for pound NZD. Okay, so over to CAD Yen. So CAD Yen, I'm very bearish on this one as a whole, but we have taken out the wick lows now, so I'm expecting a little bit of a retracement. The market is number one, very, very tired. You can see we're not seeing much momentum anymore. A lot of wicks here. The market is looking very tired, at least in terms of the candlesticks and also where we're trading as well. Big wick low, we've just pierced that, so potentially might see a bit of a relief for CAD Yen. However, My longer term bias is still expecting a lot more downside. What I am looking for is now another lower high, perhaps on the retest of this level for some shorts. So what you could be looking at is some pullback opportunities, so buying CAD yen on the way up to sell it back down again. Depends what you're looking for, if you're a bull or a bear. If you are a bear like myself, you're kind of waiting for the retest of these areas for some shorts, which might take a week in itself for price to get there, so you have to take that into consideration. If you're looking for some longs, I like how price is looking. Potentially, if you can get another stab to the downside, that would be really nice, especially if you can just about take out the wick lows there. Find some nice entries on a rejection, stops below the low, and you can take advantage of the pullback for a push back into resistance. Then, of course, we can judge how price reacts and potentially get some sells back down again from around 106.5. If I expand to the daily chart, whip out the Fibonacci from the swing high to the swing low, I do believe it lines up pretty well with the 50. Yeah, so if you can get a pullback into that area, that would be really, really nice, and hopefully continue the bearish path, because long term, I actually do see a lot lower prices. I do think eventually we can push back into the lows here at 95-ish. So yeah, CAD yen extremely bearish on long term, but of course, I can't ignore the fact that we are still seeing rejection, so a pullback looks likely. So yeah, pretty bullish on CAD yen short term, bearish long term. Some longs around 101.5 look good, and then we can speak about some shorts around the 106 area, hopefully later in the week, and that will be the plan for CAD yen. Okay, so pound USD up next. So very big move for this one over the past few days. However, it does look like it's time to retrace and see some downside. I'm still very bullish on pound USD. We came back in respect to the really big low down here, a big area of demand that gave us this big push to the upside, create new highs past this point. We came back, respected it, and had a really strong reaction, and also broke structure to the upside as well. So I'm expecting more upside long term, potentially even a swing back to the high at 1.341, 3415. So that could be a possibility. Of course, not really looking to trade that in one go, but at least a pullback perhaps into this area around 1.27 and some buys back into the same high. That could be a nice trade over the course of a few days, and that's really what I'm looking at for pound USD. If I drop to the 4-hour chart, you can see we've got a nice area of confluence here connecting the higher lows. 1, 2, 3, 4 there. Didn't quite test the trend line, but still continuing with the higher highs and higher lows. We do have this nice consolidation, which gave us a big break to the upside. So essentially looking for price to come back and retest that area for some buys. You can see how corrective we are as well. Oh, that is an awful line. Let me just use the channel tool there. Makes things a bit easier. So you can see how corrective we are, which is a bit of a red flag for the buyers. It looks like pound USD is getting ready for a pullback. And if it is to come back and test 1.27, that would be great. Looking for some entries and just keeping things relatively simple. A swing back to where we came from. If that's where we do pull back, I think that would be a nice target. So around the big psych level 1.3 as well. So that will be a nice kind of trade for the next few days there for pound USD. So looking for a bit of a pullback, 1.27 buys, and see if we can take it back into the swing high. Okay, so next up we've got pound CAD. So pound CAD, really big move to the upside for this one. Very, very stretched, expecting a bit of a pullback now. Again, we're taking out some major highs in the weekly chart as well. Look to the left, this is a high going back to 2018 March. And of course, it's March 2025 now, so that's a good 7 years of price action separating that point and now this point. And the market is pretty stretched as well. So I do think now it's time for a pullback, taking out a major high, very stretched. I think CAD might gain some strength a little bit. So I do still see pound CAD falling. You can see on the weekly chart as well, big wick to the upside this week. So it's a sign that momentum is slowing down. Daily chart, we're seeing some rejection. Nice bearish engulfing candle there on Friday as well. Of course, this trade is still very aggressive because we're not necessarily selling from a big level. It's just the expectation that the market is pretty oversold, which again is not necessarily a bad idea to short the market. It's just you understand you're taking more of an aggressive trade. Which again, there's nothing wrong taking an aggressive trade as long as you understand what you're looking to do there. But another push back to the high, I think that would be a nice place for a short. If we can push back into resistance, find a nice stop loss above the high, I think that would be a nice place to get involved in the market in the lower time frames. If you're looking to buy the market, then there's still a really nice level below us on the daily chart. As you can see, massive resistance here. I'm looking for price to come back and retest that as support, which could take maybe a week or two for us to get there. So that might be a bit more of a bigger swing trade, which you might keep in the back of your mind for now until we actually get closer to that level. But we broke through that, never really had a retest on the daily, so it looks good for a bounce. But of course, we need price to get there first. And if you're looking for some counter trend sells, looking to kind of fade that move, I do think shorts look good around 1.875. So yeah, shorts for pound CAD start the week off. Hopefully some buys, well, maybe at the end of the week if we had a really bearish drop, a really strong bearish move this week, but that might be the week after we'll be talking about that level. But yeah, very bearish on pound CAD, expecting retracement for some longer term buys around 1.815. Okay, so next up we've got pound yen. So pound yen, I'm expecting a bit of a push to the upside. Looks like price is starting to round a little bit at this level, and typically when we get this rounding type of price action, especially at a low, it does tend to give us a bit of a push to the upside. Now, I'm still very bearish on pound yen longer term, so my expectation is still a push to the wick low here and a bigger move. We're still trading at really high prices, respecting really big key levels on the monthly chart even, so I do expect pound yen to reverse. However, now's not the time to be looking for at least swing sells. If you're looking for, of course, intraday sells, that's a different scenario, but if you're looking for a swing trade from a short perspective, now's not the best time to be looking to jump into any shorts as the daily chart is rounding off here. So I'm expecting a bit of a push to the upside here for pound yen, and then some sells later on. Perhaps we can form a nice lower high. We've got one over here, second one over there. Perhaps we could form a third one coming back into this kind of area of supply. Respect that trend line as well, that would be nice. And possibly from there we might catch a big sell. My expectation is still a new low past this wick point here, so that's where I'm looking for pound yen to get to, and there could be some really nice sells on the horizon. But first, I do think some upside, and it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for some buys, there might be some nice buys next week, perhaps on the retest of that low, or if we come a little bit deeper on the retest of support along with the trend line. And then if we can get back to resistance, great. We'll see what we can do around that area, and hopefully some sells could be looking good on the way back down. So this is really what I'm focused on, the shorts, but again, that might take a few days to develop. Longs on the lower time frames look pretty good around support around there. If we have a slightly deeper push, buys down here look good as well. So that's really what I'm looking at for pound yen. So keep an eye on 191 and also 189. Then some sells around 196, and that will be the plan next week for pound yen. Okay, so over to gold. So gold very bullish this week, breaking through the highs, new all-time highs again, and we've just gone and smashed into 3K, big psychological level. Now gold is just very bullish on pretty much every time frame, monthly, weekly, daily, 4 hour, still seeing upside there. So it's very difficult to try and call tops here with gold, but looking for some pullbacks and some buys is a slightly easier task. So I'm looking for some pullbacks for gold. We had a really big breakout, the consolidation, haven't really come back to retest it. If gold will be kind enough to come back and retest that, that'll be amazing. If I could see some appropriate confirmations, I'll look to long and just take it back to wherever the swing high is. If we're going to pull back from here, great. That would be my target for the trade. Now, gold could, of course, very much just rally next week and things will be looking very bullish. If that's the case, then the only really way you're finding trades is if you look at like the 15-minute chart for some pullbacks and look for some longs on that kind of horizon, because you're going to get some big candles and smaller shallow pullbacks, kind of like what we got here, kind of like what we got in these areas here. You're not going to get the bigger pullbacks, but since we did get a pretty big pullback not long ago, price might be encouraged to do something similar as well. So that's why I'm looking at some longs at that area, and also it's a nice consolidation which is due a retest too. So I like the opportunity around this level. We'll have to wait and see if we get that pullback. If gold is just going to break out and just explode, then like I said, the best thing you can look at is lower time frame pullbacks and just take advantage of that momentum. But for now, that's my plan for next week. Some buys around 29.28 and take it back to the highs. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is still pretty bearish on, looking for more downside before we can talk about some longs from around 72, 73K. I like the retest of the high here. Really big breakout, and we never saw the retest of that level. And it looks like price is coming back to retest that range. So I do think we can find some nice buys there for Bitcoin. Whether it takes us all the way back to the all-time highs, I'm not too sure about that. yeah, it might be like a bigger reaction and then we form a lower high and come back down. It depends a lot on the indices as well. They're very correlated at the moment. If the indices are still going to head down, which looks like they potentially are, maybe after a bit of a pullback, then that probably will invite more downside for Bitcoin. But at least there probably will be some nice buying opportunities here to take advantage of. It might not be a push to the high, but I would expect at least sufficient move where it's worth the while. So yeah, dropping to the lower time frames, things are looking pretty corrective. Still looking for another push to the downside and some longs from that area. You can see after price is taking out these lows, we're getting some really big reactions. So after we take out some more lows, we probably will get that bounce there too. Perhaps if we do push to the upside, there might be some shorts in the meantime to take advantage of another test of 90k, solid level of support, ton of resistance. We might get another opportunity for that again. So keep an eye on that in case you have a bigger pullback. But for me, I'm more focused about the longs here for another reaction. And we'll see how far we can take it. If we can get back to 90k, I think that'll be a really nice trade itself. And we'll see where we can go from there. But for now, that's really the plan for next week for Bitcoin. Okay, so next up we've got NAS. So NAS, I'm really bearish on this one. Big break to the downside in the indices the past couple of weeks. And we've well and truly broken through support. I mean, essentially, NAS was consolidating for a while now, and now we've picked our direction, which is a clean break to the downside after that big double top. So I'm expecting more downside. I've also added the 200 moving average, which is quite a pivotal reference point for the US indices, and it hasn't been for a long time since we broke underneath the 200. Last time we did that fully was kind of this break here, and it did kickstart a pretty big bearish correction before we did continue to the upside. And perhaps we might see something similar potentially. It could be a fake out as well. If you do come straight back above the 200, then price is looking very bullish again. But if we do pull back to the upside and correct slowly, perhaps respect resistance, that could invite another sell, just like we did over here as well. So looking at some shorts for CAD, I don't know where that came from. Looking at some shorts for US 100, there could be some nice longs to take in the meantime, because number one, the market is quite stretched, so I expect it to drift back towards the 200 pretty soon. It looks like it's creating some nice support on the 4-hour chart. Looks like a nice double bottom. Perhaps if price can come back, retest that area, I think that would be a really nice place for a buy. Again, a bit more of an aggressive trade, but your expectation is that you're expecting a bit of a relief for the NAS, and especially with the big selling pressure we've had now, a lot of people will be kind of maybe panic selling and getting in at the wrong times. So it'll be a much better opportunity to find some longs here, take advantage of potentially that pullback before some shorts later on. But yeah, I am pretty bearish on NAS. If we can get a pullback into 2600, that could be a really nice place for some shorts. Perhaps the 200 moving average as well will kind of round off a little bit, maybe come into that area as confluence, and we can short from that area as well, and possibly take it back into the lows. So yeah, pretty bearish on NAS, expecting some buys to start off the week, because I expect the pullback to happen. The market is a little bit corrective as well. It's not like we're bleeding heavily. The market is still pretty corrective here. So I do expect a pullback, and if you're looking to buy, I think it's a good time to be looking for that. And if you're looking to sell, I'll wait for a bigger push back to 2600, and we'll see what we can get at those prices. But yeah, guys, that does bring us to the end of the analysis. If you have found it useful, please be sure to drop a like on the video. It does really help out. Subscribe to the channel, and of course hit the bell. Also check out the link to the Discord, which is in the description below, for Elevating Traders. You can find out a lot more information there about Elevating Traders, updates there as well. You can join discussions, chat with other traders, chat with myself. I share my ideas there as well. So if you kind of want to see in real time what I'm looking at, check out the Discord, link in the description to that. If you have enjoyed the video, guys, please be sure to drop a like on your way out. Comment below any pairs you're looking to trade next week. I'm interested to find out. But I appreciate you tuning in. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you all next week.